Rockstar gang, what up? What up? Appreciate everyone join the live stream again. Do me a favor, please. Make sure you pound that like button, subscribe, and click that post notifications bell. That's all I ask. Appreciate everyone being in here. Welcome to yet another edition of the Rockstar Report. If you're new here in the NFL and the Carolina Panthers is your bugaboo, then look no further. Look no further. All right. Man. The reason why I made this stream tonight is because there's so many talks about so many different players, right? We're talking about drafts. We're talking about like the free agency. We're talking about trade talks. Like there are so many obstacles that we could go this offseason. Really, I should just do a stream for each and every one of them. But really, I feel like I could break them all down in one stream, really, for you. I really could break this all down in 1 hour live stream. That's how long we're normally live, an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, right? So really, we've got enough time, right, to break this down. Okay. So why not? I said, why not? Let's go ahead and break this down from a live stream and just break everything down. So first things first, let's pull up a list. We're going to get into the free agents. Okay, we're going to go into free agents first because that's what comes first. Free agency comes first. And then we'll talk about the draft. Then we'll talk about trade targets. And then again, make sure you guys tune in tomorrow night. Again, we do our weekly mock draft. So our weekly mock draft is tomorrow night. So make sure you guys tune in, okay? All right. Let's see if we can pull up a list of the top free agents in 2025. I like to use okay. I like to use PFF. I think we're going to use. I don't know if I'm going to use PFF. I might use let's back this up. Let's get back. Okay, here's our top free. We got top free agents, all statuses, all positions. We got wide receivers. Okay. All right. We're gonna use Spot Track. We're gonna use Spot Track tonight. All right, there's a lot of free agents. We talked about one last night in all these different positions. So let's go into position. I mean, really, what free agent quarterbacks? I mean, if you're here's the thing. Andy Dalton's a free agent. I don't know. So let's start with the quarterback position because I don't know what we're gonna do once Dalton is out of here. I don't know if Dalton is gonna stay here. I don't know if he's gonna leave here, or we really don't know what he's gonna do yet. But we do need to get a backup. Now, Jack Plummer ain't gonna be someone. I don't know. I don't see Jack Plummer being just some guy that we're going to use in free agency, ladies and gentlemen. All right. I can see someone they bring in like a Zach Wilson, a younger guy, to back up Bryce. I mean, unless they want to bring someone else in with a veteran status. I mean, you're looking at a very minimal payday for this guy, really. I can see someone like a Zach Wilson. I'd like to bring in a Marcus Mariota, right? Tyler Warren, Antonio. I know all about Tyler Warren. I'd love to bring in a Marcus Mariota as a backup for him, honestly. I I think Marcus Mariota would be a great person to back up Bryce, or if Bryce went down, that's a veteran guy right there. I mean, they might bring. I mean, they may bring Dalton back for a year. A fun one for me would be I would love to. I would love to see Jameis Winston be a guy that Carolina brings in, just because of him in general. Bringing him in, I mean, his payday is it's nothing. But bringing a guy in like Jameis Winston to be a backup to Bryce and a locker room type of fun. I mean, like a guy who could just be fun for the locker room, his personality, his leadership. Shit, man. Someone who could bring, if the morale is down, this is a guy that could boost anybody's spirits. I mean, how funny he is and how much of but he is a true leader. He's probably got one of the best. He's definitely got one of the best like pregame speeches you'll ever see out there. He's a walking meme. I wouldn't be opposed to a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo as well. A Cooper Rush would be I would be fine with a Cooper Rush to be a backup. Russ is probably going to the Raiders, so that's not a guy we're gonna bring in. You could bring a Teddy Bridgewater to sit behind. We could bring two gloves Teddy back to sit behind Bryce. How about promote Plummer? I just don't know if I don't know if I trust Plummer, man. I just don't know. Um, at first I was like, this guy ain't it, but then he kind of proved me wrong after after that preseason game against the Bills. So Rock, I don't know. Yeah, Luke Nasty, I would be absolutely okay with bringing in Jameis Winston. The money for a backup quarterback, the money ain't the problem here, unless you're going after Sam Darnold or somebody like that. After what Sam did, he's looking for a max deal. All right, let's go back. Let's go to running backs. Let's see if there's any running backs. Really, there's not really any running backs that I mean, for me, I mean, there's definitely some free agent targets, man, that I want. Should I be eyeing a guy like any running backs here? I don't know. I'm not sure if I would be eyeing any of these running backs here. I mean, some of these guys are very enticing. Like AJ Dillon is I like an AJ Dillon, a guy that can bulldoze, but can catch. Javonte Williams is a guy who's young, 4 years old, just has some injury issues. There's really not a lot of running backs. I mean, again, like, am I really gonna waste some 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 of my cap on some of these guys? I don't know. I can't believe Nick Chubb is a free agent, which would be I don't see him. I mean, I see Cleveland trying to get him back, but I doubt that he goes anywhere. J.K. Dobbins had a resurgence of a year. Rico Dowdle was 1,000-yard back. Kareem Hunt looked good in Kansas City. I'm not bringing Mike Boone back. I mean, there's definitely some guys here that are definitely serviceable. I would think about bringing Raheem Blackshear back. Kenneth Gainwell is a guy that I wouldn't, or Elijah Mitchell, I might look into bringing in. Khalil Herbert as well. There's definitely, I mean, Jordan Mason, Jalen Warren, like there's plenty of running backs that we could, if we wanted to go in the free agents, grab some guys, wouldn't be opposed. It would not be opposed. We definitely need to look into the running back position. I think the running back position is definitely one of the ones we definitely need to look at for sure. Um, just because you know, I definitely think that you don't know what you're going to get out of you're not sure what you're going to get out of you're not sure what Jonathan Brooks is going to do. You don't know what his injury looks like, right? I mean, running backs is going to be it's I mean, Jonathan Brooks is out. Like I don't see Jonathan Brooks coming back next year, ladies and gentlemen. I really don't, right? Um Here's the thing. Here's the thing, you have a tough decision to make. It would help that if they made it sooner than later. I think Miles Sanders has an additional $1 million roster bonus that triggers if he's on this team the third day of the league year, which would be March 14th, right? So we have to save. So we'll need to if we so we'll have like I think it's like 2.9 million in dead cap with 5.2 in savings if they release him before then. So if we release Miles Sanders before then, we will only take a 2.9 million dead cap hit, but we'll save us 5.2 million on top of that. Now, with here's the thing, with 3.95 with 4.2 in savings after the fact. So it would if we do it before March 14th or March 14th, listen again. If we release Miles Sanders before March 14th, okay, we will end up have a dead cap of 2.9 and we would save 5.2. But if we do it after the fact, it would end up being a dead cap hit of 3.9 and only saving 4.2. So if he's not released by the date, you can assume he'll be on the team again. So I expect them to release him, to be honest with you. Right? Blackshear, with the way NFL contracts work, restricted free agents like him, he's some of the easiest players to retain. Perhaps, exclusive rights to free agents. Uh, so again, if things pan out the way I think they will in free agency, with Miles Sanders and Boone out on the way out, right, which they are already, they'll probably start Jonathan Brooks off under the pup list as he rehabs that injury. I think they'll have Chuba with the starter. I think Blackshear's a guy that they'll bring back because he'll serve as a deeper backup, but his kick returning skills, I think they'll keep. But that's really not enough. They'll need at least one body, considering the investment on Hubbard Brooks. There's really no reason to break the bank either. So I think Hubbard's a fairly balanced player who can handle both the pass and the run. So maybe another balanced player to step in when that he needs, a breather. That makes a lot of sense. You're not going to pay up for guys like a Najee Harris that you see here or an Aaron Jones, but there are some options out there. That's why I was saying, like, again, Javonte Williams, Rico Dowdle, and Alexander Madison right here. You also got Cam Akers. Right here. He's right there. Again, like I said, Kenneth Gainwell was another guy I mentioned. Right here, these guys are serviceable. Khalil Herbert. Like, I think those are some guys that they could go out in free agency and get. Right. All right. Marcos, this um I'm saying in this situation right here, I'm saying in this situation right here, I think you've got. I think you've got to. I think you have to. Um, I think you need to try to get a free agent running back. I think you need to get a free agent running back. I think that. I mean, yes, you could draft one, but with how many holes we have on this defense, I'd rather not. Um, I'd rather not draft a running back. I just wouldn't. I'd rather not. I'd rather take a chance on a guy like a Kenneth Gainwell or Khalil Herbert or the guys like I mentioned. Like that's what I would rather do. I'd rather go that route than anything else. I'd rather save all the picks that we can get with what we have now. I'd rather save the picks we can get defensive players or a linebacker, something like that, instead of drafting a running back. And I'd rather save our picks. That's just me. So I think guys that, like I said, I think guys that I mentioned, like um um who is all the guys I was mentioning? Javonte Williams or a I mean, there's a lot of running backs in here, man. For cheap. AJ Dillon's cheap. Javonte Williams, Alexander Madison. Um hell, I'd bring JK Dobbins, but again, I think guys that are serviceable out there, right? That could be, there are some options that, like I said, that are worth kicking the tires down the road on. And, Javonte Williams, Rico Dowdle, Alexander Madison, Cam Akers, Khalil Herbert, Kenneth Gainwell, they're all in here. Because you're not going to go out and get a guy like a Najee Harris or Aaron Jones, because those are starters immediately. So, as much fun as that sounds, it makes no sense. All right, let's get into the wide receivers. Now, here's the thing, okay? Here when we're talking about free agent wide receivers, okay? Obviously the name that comes up the most is T Higgins. Okay? I think again, T Higgins makes a lot of sense. I mean, he does. All right? T Higgins makes a lot of sense for the Carolina Panthers, for sure. Right? I think, Bryce needs a number one, a legitimate number one. Yes, Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker had their moments as rookies, and Adam Thielen is a reliable pair of hands, but none of these guys are game changers. Like again, you do need a wideout who can take over the games, not just complement the offense. Again, you bring in a guy like a T Higgins. If the Bengals can't figure out how to keep him there, obviously T Higgins, he's ready to move on, right? I think he wants to be a Bengal. I also think that the Bengals want to keep him there, and they want to keep that nice duo that they've got with Jamar Chase. But I think the Panthers should absolutely be in this dance, and I think they are going to be. Like, right? I think again, when you think about Bryce Young's late season resurgence, and makes Carolina a surprisingly attractive place once again in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's heading in the right direction. You're trying to sell what we saw in those last 10 weeks of the season, right? So again, but getting a guy like T Higgins isn't going to be cheap, right? You're gonna might as well go ahead and expect a bidding war that could push his price tag to 30 million per year. Again, that's a steep price, but if you're not willing to spend big on a franchise cornerstone wide receiver, what's the point? Right? What's the point? You have to be able to be willing to and get you have to be out willing to go out there and get the risk it and get a guy like this. There are some questions here. Luke Nasty, is it possible for us to trade for Garrett? It's definitely possible, but I talked about it last night. It doesn't make a lot of sense from a cap standpoint. Could have saved $8 million if we cut Miles Sanders before last season. I think we could if we would have cut him before the June. Was it the June 1st deadline? You would have saved actually like 10.3. So they didn't. Y'all need defensive help, right? Get Josh Sweat and all those Eagles players away from those Green Devils, please. Josh Sweat's definitely on my list. We'll talk more about him. We talked about him a little bit last night. So you're saying draft a running back or sign one? Sign one is what I was talking about. I disagree with that take. It's fine, Rock. You can disagree with it. What about that running back your boy Dan was talking about, Gordon? I think it was his name in the mid rounds. Yeah, he's talking about Ali Gordon out of Oklahoma State. I mean, yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not fully opposed to drafting another running back, but it's not like a top priority for me when we're talking about like guys that we really need from a defensive standpoint. That's what I'm getting at. I like Williams. I think free agency running back behind Hubbard isn't a terrible idea, but why not just stick it out with Miles last year, focus on the defense side of the ball this year? And that's also my other idea as well, Luke. I mean, it's kind of like give or take at this point, but also I want us to be aggressive. So, and that's not only in free agency, but that's also in the draft. So sometimes you got to take risk, whether it's signing guys that we don't expect them to, or whether it's them, signing a running back free agency, or they drafting one. Like we've got to hammer this defense no matter what in this draft. No, but you could draft a yeah. Dude, Spot Track's got too many ads. We're gonna have to get out of Spot Track. There's just too many ads, and it is lagging like crazy. Let's go top 100 players through PFF instead. All right, so we talked about T. Higgins. Not going to talk about Trey Smith. Javon Holland is an interesting one there. From a safety standpoint. I mean, we do need some safety help. He's getting compared to a top free agent. Jesse Bates was ranked one of the 5 highest graded safeties in the first 2 of his first 3 seasons in the league. He earned a career low PFF grade in 2024, but his body of work speaks for itself. True. I mean, safety help always helps. There's actually another one. Chris Godwin is a guy we've talked about. Khalil Mack. Let's talk about Khalil Mack real quick. This one's interesting. Khalil Mack is on the back end of his career. I will say that. Again, it's clear, we're not getting to the quarterback. Khalil Mack does. I mean, I know he's a veteran edge rusher. I mean, might be the twilight of his career, but he's still forced to be reckoned with. I mean, he had an 88 point. They gave him a 0.8, basically an 88 run defensive grade on Pro Football Focus. So, was second among 211 edge rushers, proof that he's far from washed. I mean, again, and I think PFF puts it in a interesting situation. If you go look back at Von Miller in that 2022, signed that 6-year contract with the Buffalo Bills, and it was ended up being more like a 3 years. 52.5 million reality. So maybe that's a move they make, right? It's a cheaper option, right? I think a guy like Khalil Mack is interesting because you could bring in that leadership. He could bring in that intensity that we need in that defense. Um, Most importantly, his production to a defensive unit that we desperately need. I mean, he's a short-term fix for sure, but sometimes that's exactly what you need to stop the bleeding. All right. I'd rather use PFF at this point. Kayvon Turpin, I'm such a fool for thinking Jeremy Chin was our future. Chin was good. Evero just didn't know how to use him. That's correct. That is correct. DJ Reed is an intriguing one as well from a corner standpoint. I mean, I know we need that. Again, I think Amari Cooper is actually another guy that's underrated. I think Amari Cooper for a wide receiver to bring in, like if T. Higgins is too pricey, I think Amari Cooper is a solid plan B, to be honest with you. Like you're talking about a 5-time Pro Bowler, didn't quite light it up with the Bills. He's still one of the league's sharpest route runners at 31. He's no spring chicken. But he's a proven commodity who I think would intensely upgrade the Panthers receiving core without you breaking the bank. Like if you wanted to get a wide receiver, right? Cooper's route running ability is top 5. His ability to create separation aligns perfectly with what this offensive scheme that Dave Canales is going to be running. I think you pair him up with Bryce Young, who's improved his accuracy, could be a match made in heaven, right? Plus the price tag would significantly be lower than T. Higgins, right? Allow the Panthers to address other areas of need, right? And they're saying giving him a comparison of DeAndre Hopkins back in 2023 when he signed with or when he was with the Tennessee Titans. Again, we talked about Josh Sweat. I'm glad that they brought up Josh Sweat. Josh Sweat is a guy that we could bring in. You're talking about a guy that I would rather bring in. The only reason why I say I'd rather bring him in than Myles Garrett is just because the price tag would not be as high as a Myles Garrett. You're talking about a $10 million edge rusher, right? And again, I think he fits the mold here, right? He's a game changer, plain and simple. Bryce Young saw all about that when we played him. Again, Joshua is an established player in this league. So this isn't just some untested rookie or an over-the-hill veteran, right? This guy is a proven, he can deliver week in and week out. Guy's got plenty of gas in the tank. He's 27 and his prime still. Just be adding we wouldn't just be adding a good player, ladies and gentlemen, right? We're bringing in a cornerstone player for our defense, and Joshua is a cornerstone player in my opinion. This is the kind of moves that I'm talking about that turns you from a pretender to a contender, right? That's what these types of moves, going after guys like this, that's what climbs you out of that NFC South basement, right? I think Josh Sweat is one of the best moves that Carolina can make this offseason, in my opinion. But we shall see. Bring in Cup. You're gonna have to trade him. He's old and he costs too much. He's old and he can't. He's old and he can't cost too much. Cup is old and he does cost too much. He's on the decline and he's on his way out. Doesn't make a lot of sense for Cooper Cup. I explained that last night. It does not make sense. From a contract standpoint, it does not make sense to me to go after a Cooper Cup. Just like it doesn't make sense for Myles Garrett. Like, Myles Garrett wouldn't want to come here anyways because we're not a contending team right now. In my opinion, I still think we're in a rebuild, and I'm going to keep it that way until proven otherwise. Chase Young, a 1-year deal. I'm okay. on that. Could be. Could be. Um, Man, again, you could look at a Hassan Reddick, but again, I don't know. I don't know what his contract projection. Let's see if we can go look at contract projections. So if we go to T Higgins, his contract track projections. So like we were just looking at these guys, right? So con so we're talking about 32 teams. We can go look at all these position groups, right? So we can look at all these position groups here, as you can see, and we can go through these free agent rankings. Like I said, you're looking at a 4-year, $28 million average, which means basically this is what the market value for a T Higgins would be. You're looking at a $67.5 million guarantee with $112 million in total. So if you want to go for a T Higgins, right? All right, we'll move on to Cherry Smith. We'll move on, Chris. See, Khalil Mack, a 2-year, 22.25 average, per year, right? I mean, that's basically what we're paying Jadeveon Clowney and those guys. Basically a 2-year, $20 million. But look at that. I mean, look at that. 5th best edge rusher. I mean, yeah, he's 34 years old, but still is balling. Amari Cooper, again, you're talking about a 2-year deal, $17.5 million average. I'm okay with that. Let's see. Look, damn, I would never thought I'd see the day where Sam Darnold would be projected a $70 million guaranteed contract with $123.75 million total. Okay, so again, Josh Sweat, a 3-year contract, averaging $18 million. That's cheaper than Myles Garrett. And I'd be okay with that. I'm going to move on from Stephon Diggs. That's not a person I'm looking at. Hassan Reddick didn't play enough. So Zach Bond, I don't know about your linebackers. I would look at Zach Bond. Zach Bond is definitely a guy I would look into. Look at Russell Douglas. Let's see. Dre Greenlaw is another guy, man. I would look into getting a guy like Dre Greenlaw. I mean, that's another free agent right there. Dre Greenlaw. I mean, dude, why I think Dre Greenlaw for a linebacker makes a lot of sense, man. Here's the reason why I think Dre Greenlaw makes I'll tell you why Dre Greenlaw makes a lot of sense. Okay. I mean, and especially for the price you're getting him at. I mean, it makes a lot of freaking sense. This guy, Dre Greenlaw, for a 27-year-old, like you get a guy you get Josh Sweat and a Dre Greenlaw in the free agency, man, there's no telling what you could do. Like a 1-year, his projected contract is 1 year, $6 million. That is a steal. And he only played 34 snaps for San Francisco this season and still had to finish the season with an 82 season grade. Like this guy has been a cornerstone for the San Francisco's defense. I don't care what anybody says. Like this guy is not just a good player; he's a badass. Like again, I get that he came off an Achilles injury. He suffered in the Super Bowl, and then just had his first game back in like December, and he immediately racked up 8 tackles. Like he didn't even miss a beat. So that's the kind of player I'm talking about here. You're talking about the dog mentality. Well, Dre Greenlaw is a guy that's got a dog mentality. He's relentless, he's aggressive, and he's an absolute force in the middle of the field. Like that's what I'm talking about. There's no coincidence that the 49ers defense has taken a noticeable step back this year without Greenlaw. right? Anchoring that linebacker core. So he's the glue that holds it together. I think if Carol, again, I think if Dan Morgan is serious about building that defense that could actually strike fear in opposing offenses, man, like this is one of the guys that could help that, right? Getting in the right direction. Just like I said, Josh Sweat is another one, right? I think again, Josh Sweat and him together would be a lot of fun to watch. Here's a safety for you right here. I think Talana Hufanga is an NFL free agency. I would look free agent. I would look at. I would look at Talanoa Hufanga. I mean, 2 years, 12.5. Like, if you could get Khalil Mack, Josh Sweat, Dre Greenlaw, and this guy based off their contracts alone. Like we already know Xavier Woods might not be back. You got Jordan Ford, Nick Scott reunion experiment that was a flaming mess. Sam Franklin's a solid on special teams, but not a reliable defensive option. I know that this guy has injury issues. He brings that kind of edge this defense sorely lacks, especially in the secondary, right? He's a hard-hitting safety who reads plays like a quarterback and isn't afraid to lay the wood. Like, his coverage skills are serviceable, but his real value comes into that aggressiveness and his football IQ. So I think if the 49ers let him walk, which he's a free agent, I think this is another guy we should pounce on. Like, just make sure the Metal team gives him a thorough once-over before they do that. Like, let's see who else we got. Sante Samuel. Here's a guy that I like right here. Osa Adigizua for a defensive tackle. This is a guy I think that could be also beneficial to us at a free agency. I really do. You're talking about a guy who he isn't a traditional run stuffer. I'll say that. Okay. But he's disruptive enough to make life miserable for opposing offenses. Sorry. And I think last year he had over 60 pressures in 2024. And he ranked third among defensive linemen, showing that. I mean, he's only 26 years old. His best football's still ahead of him. Sure, he needs to shore up his run defense, but you're pairing him with a healthy Derek Brown. Again, you still got Ashawn Robinson. Could create a dynamic interior duo. Like, the Washington Commanders might sniff around given his connection to Dan Quinn, but I think the Panthers could be aggressive on this guy too. That's another defensive player I would like to look at this offseason. Let's see here. There was another one I wanted to look at. I can't believe Nick Bolton, I mean, at 24 could be, I mean, damn, he's 24. He looks older than 24. Hollywood Brown, 27 years old, could be a wide receiver to look into. Cheap wide receiver you look to. Darius Slayton's a guy. Like, again, there are some wide receivers still available here. That I wouldn't be surprised if we went out and got some guys like this. Like, if you look at that depth chart right now, like, again, I wouldn't be surprised if they go and look at some of these guys. Like, again, T. Higgins or Chris Godwin. Like, even if Adam Thielen does decide to hang them up, which he obviously isn't, but we're not in a position to go out and get someone like a T. Higgins or Chris Godwin, especially for the contract, right? I think if Thielen, obviously with Thielen back, you got Coker, you got Leggett, they can operate as the outside wide receivers, and with Thielen in the slot. But let's say if Thielen gets injured, right? That that is where we'll need a replacement production. So, like, given the NFL life cycle, we know how that is. I think guys like a Tyler Boyd, somebody like that, or maybe Elijah Moore or Bo Milton, Rondell Moore. Like, those are the guys you could get in the slot, like Elijah Moore, Bo Melton, Rondell Moore. Those are more of your slot guys. But if you're looking for a field stretcher, I would say a Tutu Otwell or a Diami Brown or Joshua Palmer. Those are guys. I mean, Darius Slayton's name's been thrown in that hat of someone we could go after. Keenan Allen's interesting. His age is the issue for me. Yeah, I'm not. Bobby Wagner, right, dude, is still playing at a decent high level. Um, let's see who else. Aziz Julieri is a guy that I mean, for a 1 year, $5 million contract, I would look into. Same thing with BJ Hill. I know he's 29, but damn, 2 years, 10, not bad. No. At least from a Zach Bond. All right, so here we go. Zach Bond. Zach Bond's a good one. I like the Zach. I like Zach Bond. I mean, I know a lot of you guys were just commenting in here. What about Zach Bond? We should look at Zach Bond. Zach Bond is a solid pickup. Could be a solid pickup. He's one of the guys I was looking into to go pick up. You could get in free agency. You're talking about a linebacker who it was number 1 ranked PFF linebacker based off of PFF. I mean, 3 years, 13 million. Like, you got to think about it this way. If Carolina lets go Shaq Thompson and walk in free agency, they'll still have a glaring hole at linebacker. You can't tell me you feel reliable with Josie Jewell and Trevor Wallace, because behind them, who is there, right? You plug Bond in that gap alongside Josie Jewell, could give them one of the best linebacker duos in the league, possibly. Like, you signing Bond won't, and I don't think it would put a huge hole based off his projected contract. I don't think it's going to blow a hole in our cap space, right? We do have other pressing defensive needs, like bolstering up that line or shoring up the secondary with 2 new safeties. But some people might think that we don't have the wiggle room to get a guy like Zach Bond. I could say otherwise, right? But I think Bond would be a perfect fit as long as the price is right, right? I mean, after the season he's had this year, I mean, the guy could end up getting paid. You know what I mean? You're talking about a guy that could end up getting paid. And especially, let's see what he does in the Super Bowl. There's no telling, right? There's no telling what he could do, right? I mean, you're talking about a guy who earned first. He locked down a Pro Bowl spot. He earned a first team All Pro honors. I mean, Zach Bond's got the knack of diagnosing and shutting down ground plays. He would be a godsend for this Carolina's defense, right? Um, so we'll see. I mean, again, I wouldn't be opposed to getting a Zach Bond. Would not be opposed to getting Zach Bond. Question: do you think the Panthers could trade up for a dual or Mason? They could 0 to hero, but it doesn't make sense. But it wouldn't surprise me 0 to hero. Yep. So Zach Bond's another one. I'm trying to see if there's anybody else in here I'd like to take a look at. Um, Jermaine Sherwood wouldn't be bad, actually. I mean, Jermaine Sherwood. Hmm. I mean, Jermaine Sherwood wouldn't be a bad idea either. Like, even though for like Zach, like for example, if Zach Bond's too much money because he could end up being too much money. I mean, again, we're staring at nearly 21 million in cap space this offseason. So when you factor in operational costs, it's closer to 16. It's not terrible, but it's far from comfortable, and it's still enough to bring in at least one player who can make an impact or a couple of solid players, right? And and when I say solid players, I'm talking about solid starters, right? Um, Jermaine Sherwood, you know, if we, if Shaq, again, this is the Shaq Thompson thing, right? It's a Shaq Thompson thing. You're talking about a guy who's 6'2", 215, cracked the starting lineup full time this past season for the New York Jets. He didn't disappoint. He led the NFL with 98 solo tackles this year. Pretty impressive in my opinion. But let's be real. One good season doesn't, again, this guy could end up being like Frankie Luvu 2.0 though. Like, but also one good season doesn't always translate to a massive payday, especially for inside linebackers in today's pass heavy league, right? Sherwood might be aiming for the high end deal, but market could force him to settle for something more reasonable, which puts him squarely within our budget, right? I think if Panthers do land Jermaine Sherwood, it's almost certain that curtains for Shaq Thompson, right? I think Sherwood would slide in next to Josie Jewell with Trevor Wallace rounding out that trio, and I would be okay with that. Like, unless Thompson is willing to take a steep pay cut, and I'm talking about like a league minimum, or he'll be packing his bags in 2025. So again, the writing's all over the wall for us doing a complete defensive overhaul, right? Trying to think if there's anybody else I really like. I really like Hope. Stay away from Deontay Johnson. Any team and every team in the NFL, stay away from him. He's a fucking head case. Again, Jeremy Chin would be interesting to bring back. It would also just depend if Evero ends up using him correctly. It wouldn't be a bad idea to bring him back, especially for what we need on what we need in the safety room. We need to bring in another safety. Um, I don't even know much about this guy, but for a 1 year, 2.5, and he finished 12th in the league among defensive tackles, and he's 28 years old. It's not a bad deal for a tart. Nate Hobbs, no. Adebo was balling before he got injured. Andre Cisco is an interesting one. Not a big fan of him. Let's see if there's any other. Are there any other? Joshua Uche. Yeah, not really. There's DJ Jones is interesting. This is another guy that's pretty interesting to me as well. Um, I wouldn't be mad at going after a guy like a DJ Jones. I think this is a guy you could target again. Jones isn't a flashy player, man. For 30 years old, 2 years, 9 million. His sack numbers aren't going to light up your Twitter feed. I don't think he's ever posted more than 3 in a season. But if you're looking for a guy, I think, who can anchor the defensive line and make life miserable for opposing running backs, Jones is your man. He's racked up 12 career sacks total, 32 tackles for loss, 20 quarterbacks hits. I think he's had over 12 pass breakups, 6 forced fumbles. Like, that's not just, that's the guy's not going to fill your stat sheet. That's not what he's going to do. He's consistent. He's a hard nosed product, and he's good against the run. Right. And he brings something that the Carolina Panthers especially desperately need on that defensive front, is experience and durability, right? He's played in over 100 regular season games. He's only missed 3 games in the last 4 years. A level of reliability that's worth its weight in gold for a defense that has been fragile for us. And again, this guy's not going to cost you an arm and a leg, right? I think it would be a decent move to go after somebody like a DJ Jones. Stopping the run, you didn't know if that was even possible, right? Yeah. I know. Listen. I know that our defense was basically, this is what Carolina Panthers defensive line was like last year. That's what our defensive line was last year. Yeah, those are probably my top free agents right there. So we'll do a recap. DJ Jones. I'll say DJ Jones. I mean, Jeremy Chin is interesting. I don't know if I would put him in my top, but DJ Jones is one of them. Let's see. Who else did we talk about? Jermaine Sherwood is another one. Zach Bond's another one. Ernest Jones is interesting. I didn't even notice him there. BJ Hill's interesting, and Aziz Alugieri is very interesting. But again, guys that we spoke about, again, Osa Adiga Wuza was another guy. I don't even know if I pronounced his name correctly. Again, both of these guys are interesting. Marquise Brown and Darius Slayton from the wide receiver standpoint. Keenan Allen is interesting, but not as interesting as those other guys for me. Again, T. Higgins, Khalil Mack, Javon Holland, Amari Cooper, Josh Sweat. Anybody else? Dre Greenlaw is another one that we spoke about. Hufanga is another one that we spoke about. So those are my free agent targets. Now, if we're talking about some major trades, like you're talking about some major trades that I can see Carolina doing, I'll say this. One of them is definitely for this guy right here. Let's talk about trades real quick. Again, I think this is a guy that is, again, Garrett Wilson is a guy that we could make a blockbuster trade. Again, you're looking for a number 1 wide receiver, right? Now that relationship with New York is rocky, right? If Wilson hits that trade market, man, I think Morgan, again, Dan Morgan could be Dan Morgan. You know, when Scott Fitter would say that we're in on every deal, well, I need Dan Morgan to really, really, truly be in on every deal. I need him to be in on every deal due to the fact that we have to be aggressive this offseason. So Morgan needs to be one of the first to call about him. Again, Wilson isn't going to come cheap. He's a dynamic playmaker. His ability is exactly what we're looking for to elevate that offense, right? I think another one that would be like a huge blockbuster type of trade. I mean, we're talking about another one right here. Grover Stewart, man. Grover Stewart would be, I mean, again, he is 31 years old, but it's a guy, you're talking about a guy who still has a lot left in the tank, man. Again, I know he's 31. He's not a long-term solution, but he's still playing at a high level. His versatility across multiple defensive schemes, his elite run stopping ability. He was fourth among interior defensive linemen. And so that makes him an ideal fit. I mean, the Colts may not be eager to part ways with him, obviously, but the Panthers should be aggressive here because you can't, again, Shy Tuttle, LeBron Ray, Deshaun Williams, you haven't cut it, man. So Stewart could be the anchor this defense desperately needs. That's another guy they could trade for. Another guy is actually off of the Eagles. I think is another one that Carolina could go and try to trade and go after is a Bryce Huff. I think Bryce Huff is an interesting one. I think Bryce Huff is an interesting one. You're talking about adding edge rushing depth to this. You know, you're still only having Jadeveon Clowney, DJ Wanham holding down this fort right now. His time, I mean, Bryce Huff's time with the Eagles really hasn't gone as planned, right? He had a breakout season with the Jets. He signed with Philly in 2024. But again, he's only managed, as you can see, 2.5. But still at 27, this kid is 27 years old, still has a lot of upside. So, I mean, if the Eagles are ready to move on, I mean, the Panthers could pounce on a guy like this. Like, he's got potential to rebound, combined with his pass rushing skills, makes him a low risk, high reward type of target to trade for. You might not even have to trade that much to get a guy like a Bryce Huff, right? I think some other guys I've mentioned that we could trade for is Deebo Samuel. If you're talking about a wide receiver, DK Metcalf's another guy that's been out thrown in that trade hat. Now Cooper Kupp's been thrown in that trade hat. So when do they start making free agent moves? In March, I think it's after. I think. I think that they can do. It starts March 13th, if I'm not mistaken. I think it starts March 13th. No, March 12th. It starts on March 12th that the free agency can start. The free agency can start March 12th, Panthers gal. Yep, so it's after the Super Bowl. It could start March 12th. Chef 85 says, "What's up, brother? Love the content. Appreciate that, man. Appreciate that." Appreciate you, Chef 85. I appreciate you being here. Guys, do me a favor. Make sure you smash that like button. I would greatly appreciate it. All right. I would greatly appreciate it. There's really not a lot of trades out there that I'm just like, yeah, we got to make this trade. There's really not. There's really not a lot of trades out there. We went through a lot of free agency. Let's get all right. So let's go ahead and let's get into the draft now. Okay, let's get into the draft. We're not going to do a mock. We're just going to go to NFL draft. We're going to go to the big board. Okay. Now, my top picks, of course, for the Carolina Panthers, there's a lot. Okay. There's a lot of good you know, picking at number 8. There's a lot of again, there's guys that you want. Of course, like Abdul Carter at 8 is one of the top guys I'm definitely targeting, of course. I mean, I don't know who's not. He's obviously moved up the draft board. He's the second best player on the board now. Right? He's the second best player on the board. Right? I mean, it's not even going to be fair to try to go after this guy. I don't see him falling now. I don't see Abdul Carter falling. If we're talking about us going after him, like I think we can go after him. I just don't see him falling. I don't. There was a lot of senior guys that stood out to me in the Senior Bowl. There was a lot of guys that stood out to me in the Senior Bowl that we could talk about. But again, yeah, obviously we're in desperate need again for a consistent pass rush. Like you're talking about an explosive athlete. You're talking about a guy with a relentless motor. You're talking about a guy who's capable of wreaking havoc off the edge. His background really is he's a former linebacker that adds versatility to his game, enabling him to bring into coverage during zone blitzes packages. I think obviously our defense could utilize him effectively. All right. So again, Abdul Carter. I mean, we could talk about. I'm not even going to talk about Travis Hunter. I'm not going to talk about T Mac. Mason Graham's another one at 8. Obviously, he's a guy we could get at 8. Again, if Carter's off the board, Mason Graham's there somehow at number 8. I don't even think of twice about trading. I don't even think about trading back. I'm taking Mason Graham at number 8. Right? If one of the two between Abdul Carter and Mason Graham, if either one of them are 8, I'm not even thinking about trading back anymore. I'm taking that player right then and there. Like this is again, if Abdul Carter's on the board, here's a nice little alternative. He's a disruptive force who excels against both the run and the pass. You're talking about a guy who's got a blend of power, agility that allows him to really anchor our line of scrimmage, collapse the pocket from the interior, traits that would benefit Panthers defense that have struggled in the trenches in 2024. Will Johnson, I'm not saying I'm taking him at 8. I probably would trade back for him, but he's a guy that is a pressing need. We do need a guy to go alongside. Like Mike Jackson is serviceable. I don't know if Mike Jackson's a free agent, so I don't even know if we're going to re-sign him, if he's a guy that we're going to re-sign. But his ability to blanket top-tier receivers could elevate this unit to an elite territory with him and JC Horn. And I think Evero could deploy more creative schemes with him, really enabling this front seven to focus on shoring up a run defense that was inconsistent last season. But having a guy but you're also in the NFL where pass heavy league, and having 2 elite corners like a Will Johnson, JC Horn could set us apart in the NFL and in the NFC South. Malachi Starks, I'm not taking him at 8 either, but I'm not opposed to taking a guy like this. We definitely need some help at the safety, right? He's the best safety A lot of people say he's the best safety in the draft. I think otherwise. Not opposed to going after him, but I think a Nick Amanawari, my guy out of South Carolina, is better. Me, and that's not a homer take. That's actually a lot of analysts out there, but think the same way I do. I just think he's better. I think he's better in coverage than Malachi Starks is, and I think he's also better. He's more aggressive up front, and he's a better run stopper, in my opinion. I think Malachi Starks is definitely has a lot of interesting traits that because of his athleticism, because of his football IQ and his versatility. I like that. He's also, but I feel like he's more of a corner because the way I look at him, because he can play as a deep safety, but he could also be a nickel corner. But I've seen him play in the hybrid roll box, but I just don't think he's as good as Nick Amanawari out of South Carolina in that type of role. But I'm not opposed to going after Malachi Starks. But if we're getting into now, we're getting to so James Pierce Jr. is another one. But Mike Green was a big standout in this. You're talking about Mike Green, who had a standout week. I mean, he delivered. I mean, you're talking about a guy who, if y'all have seen his clip, man, it's all over Twitter. I mean, you're talking about a guy who blew past offensive linemen with his speed, bend. He's got a deep bag of power rush moves. I think his ability to set the edge in the run game is an added bonus. He proved to be more than just a one trick pony there at the Senior Bowl, right? So again, this guy is soaring up draft boards. Everybody's talking about Tyler Warren. I like it. It just doesn't make sense for us to go after him in the first round. I think Mykel Williams is a guy that a lot of people are sleeping on. I like Mykel Williams. He's raw though, but the size is there, the speed is there, the strength is there. That gives him all the potential to develop into a dominant edge defender. I think his physical tools and I expect him to be, like I said, I think Mykel Williams will be this year's Trayvon Walker. He will climb. He will climb up the draft board. I think that's who Mykel Williams reminds me of a lot. I think he's a guy that could rise up the draft board after that combine, like a Trayvon Walker. I'm just saying. Trying to think if I'm missing somebody else. Oh, Walter Nolan's another one who is another guy that Walter Nolan's a guy that really well. I'll talk about Shamar Stewart first, real quick. I'll talk about Walter Nolan in a second. Shamar Stewart's another guy that at the Senior Bowl is another pass rusher who proved a lot that week. He faced a lot of questions because of his versatility coming into that week, but he answered them loudly. You're talking about a 6'5", 281, great blend of size of athleticism, was unmatched there. Dominated the first 2 days of practice at that Senior Bowl. Did pretty good in the game. With power finesse, he has a lot of upside, right? And he's made his point. He made his point there at the Senior Bowl. His draft stock is on the rise right now. Now, we're talking about Walter Nolan. If we're looking for a true nose tackle who can body some people, who can be a 1 technique, 3 technique, 5 technique type of nose tackle, Walter Nolan's your guy. He can also, but he's a big run stopper, but he can get pressure on the quarterback as well. I like what Nolan brings to the table, man. Again, this is a guy that's not a one-trick pony nose tackle or a defensive lineman. I also like Walter Nolan a lot. Kenneth Grant, I'm not opposed to taking if we trade back. Greg Zabel over at Greg Zabel in might be one of the best tackles in this draft class. His draft went up like hugely. Just because of his flexibility. He can be anywhere on the interior line. So his draft stock went up after the Senior Bowl. Josh Conley, that was the guy that Mike Green ran over, which is funny. Demetrius Knight had a hell of a week there at the Senior Bowl as well. Donovan Azaruku is another guy that had a major week. TJ Sanders, Jack Betch is another guy I like. I like Jack Betch a lot out of TCU. His draft stock went up because of that Senior Bowl. Landon Jackson's draft stock went up because of that Senior Bowl. I feel like I'm missing some guys because of that Senior Bowl after watching it. Oh, here's a sleeper. If I can find him real quick. Hold on. Actually, let's go by position real quick. There's a sleeper edge defender that I want to talk to you guys about. There he is, David Walker. This guy, bro, you're talking about a guy who made a name for himself, coming from a small school, guy 6 foot, 67. You're talking about a guy who had a productive week at the Senior Bowl. I mean, you're talking about a guy who had 30. You add that all up, his sack totals. That's 37 sacks. He proved that wasn't a fluke at the Senior Bowl. For all intents and purposes, he looks like a guy who's going to stand out. He could be a day 2 or day 3 type of target for us. The rest of the edge class goes off the board in April, but he's a guy I think that we could end up taking a look at in the later rounds, and especially from what I saw in the Senior Bowl. There was another guy that we could. There was an interior defender I like that I think we should take a look at. Oh, Darius Alexander, yeah. From what my understanding was from my guys at Roundtable Sports, Alexander didn't enter the week as a top name to watch for most of that week. But once he got settled in, man, his name was he was one of the top defensive linemen that week. 6'3", 304-pound type of guy, 34-inch arms. Made a splash that almost certainly I think will boost his draft stock. He might end up being a second round pick now after what happened at the Senior Bowl. Shirley is a guy that maybe we need to keep a lookout on. Another one is another edge rusher. Where's he at? Hopefully I can find him. I might have to go back a little bit. Where's he at? No. My guy out SU. Oh, Savion Jones. Again, you're talking about another big edge rusher, big frame, 6'5", 290 frame athleticism. Again, this is a guy that has that versatility to move around the line. He made a handful of big plays during that Senior Bowl game. He's currently, I think, what is he on here? He's 119 on some other boards. He's around 157. So that week pushed his draft stock much higher. I don't know if he was at 157 on PFF, but I know some other ones he started out that way. Could be a late gem. Like this guy could end up being a late gem, day 2, day 3 type of guy if we drafted him on the boards. Another one that I like as well, and I talked about him a while back. See if I can find him. That could be another guy that we get as a linebacker. I gotta find him. I gotta find his name. There he is. Cody Lindenberg out of Minnesota, 6'3", 240 linebacker, great run defender. You're talking about a guy um who's shuffled. Well, I mean, we shuffled through different linebackers, but this guy can be shuffled around. But Lindenberg is the prototypical size you're looking for at linebacker. 6'2", 240. Showed some flashes in coverage during the Senior Bowl. He's got great instincts, top tier linebacker speed. Not a perfect prospect. He may be a player we could probably end up getting like day 3, right? It just a value in return we get. How much value in return we get from him, at least based on his value. But you could end up he might end up giving us more value for a return if we pick him in that day three round. Now, there is a corner. There wasn't now Dan, when we spoke to Dan about the Senior Bowl last week, he was saying there wasn't a lot of corners, but Ezariah Thomas is another guy, again, as a corner, continues to just thrive. When we're talking about a guy that we're looking who can jam and who can thrive in man coverage, Ezariah Thomas fits that bill. He was arguably the best cornerback at the Senior Bowl. When you look at his combination of size and length, he's got fluid hip movement to blanket receivers. His ball skills were evident there when you watch the game. He was breaking up passes. He was challenging every throw. He's physical, confident, technically sound. Thomas actually has the makings of being a day 1 contributor. And he is going up the draft boards right now. Right now, the PFF overall. This guy could be a corner you get in the second round. Now, if we're talking about offense, we're always talking. I know a lot of you guys talk about Tyler Warren, but Elijah Arroyo and Mason Taylor were both lighting it up at the Senior Bowl. Both of them were lighting it up, right? You're you're talking about a guy who stepped up in that Senior Bowl last week in the games and stuff like that we saw in the practices. You're talking about a guy, if you're looking for crisp route running, soft hands, right? The ability to win the catch, the point. His blocking as well is great. Like, he got criticized for a long time about his run blocking, but he showed to noticeably improve in sealing the edges and engaging defenders, especially for a guy who's 6'4", 245. Now, when we're talking about Mason Taylor, another tight end that don't sleep on, Mason Taylor, who is the son of Jason Taylor, for some of you that don't know, he's the prototypical size tight end, 6'4", 250. Again, this could be a guy that we target with our 3rd round pick or later to really replenish that cupboard at the tight end, right? Especially if Ian Thomas and Tommy Trimble leave, right? When we're talking about wide receivers that I noticed at the Senior Bowl, and these are guys that are going up the draft boards right now. I mean, Jack Betch is one of them. He may have one of the best stories of the Senior Bowl when we talk about it, because of the sudden tragedy, because he lost his brother in that New Orleans tragedy just a month ago. So he was the main wide receiver that stood out to me during the week and what the insight I was getting from my guys at Roundtable Sports. But he followed it up. He had a great MVP performance in that Senior Bowl, 6'1", 214. Probably destined for a power slot role in the NFL, although I think he could develop into definitely a productive outside receiver. But I think Betch is likely gone between the first and second rounds as they currently stand because his production at the Senior Bowl shot through the roof. Now, another wide receiver, again, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Rose got a lot of credit at the Senior Bowl. But another one was Tez Johnson, man. First things first, I want to say this. Tez Johnson is undersized. When you're talking about him, he was measured at 5'9", 156. He was one of the smallest receivers at the Senior Bowl ever. But he still put on a show and looked uncoverable at times during the week there. Has a lot of reminiscence of Tank Dell in him. That's a lot of comparisons. While you think that his size would disqualify him from, I think, us going after him, I would say no. Right? I get that he's a undersized receiver, but so are guys like Tyler Lockett and Paul Richardson. These are guys that you get on day 2. So I wouldn't be too quick to rule the whole Tez Johnson thing out. All right. I would not rule him out. Trying to think about draft and any other guys I would like to target. I mean, listen, there's a lot of draft prospects I'd like to target. I would love to get every draft prospect we possibly can. It's just not going to happen. But that's my Carolina draft. That is my free agent targets. That's my trade targets. That's where I stand as of right now. Things could change by the time March comes around, but that's where I stand as of right now. So I appreciate everyone joining the live stream. Do me a favor. Make sure you smash that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Again, make sure you click that post notifications bell so you don't miss out on new content. Of course, share this live out. Share the channel out with your friends, your family. I would greatly appreciate that. You can also follow me on all my social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Also, shout out to our sponsorship of this live stream, as always, BetUS. Sign up for free today. Get 125% bonus on your first bet if you use my link. So make sure you do that. Again, guys, appreciate every one of y'all. Again, as always, love you guys. Be safe, have fun, and keep pounding. I'm out. Peace.